Talking to business fans, back giving you part 2 with the Irish thug himself, Nate Stone. Nate Steele. Doesn't matter, is it just Nate?
Yeah. I think I'll just go with Nate.
Nate, the Irish thug Nate, a guy you don't want to meet in the streets. Part 1 was a blast, but we called you one of the more opinionated vets in the area. So let's get to some opinions.
Are you sure?
I'm sure, because it's a great where, at the end of the 90s, you start breaking in, and then now we're talking, it's 2015. The industry's changed so much.
And I'm re-breaking in.
Yeah, you're re-breaking it, but the industry's changed. Let's be honest. The past 15 years have been crazy. You have WWE and kind of everybody else. Territories go bye-bye. The indie scene, which was dead for years, is now in a huge regrowth.
It's still dead.
Oh, see, I won't say that because you have indie promotions that are outdrawing major promotions on the road.
Where?
Pro Wrestling Guerrilla's drawing 800 to every show they pull out, sell out within 5 minutes. The last Hood Slam show, which they do one show a month in Oakland, drew 1,200 people. Presently, you can't see this, fans. We have Ring of Honor, Winner Takes All, the 14th anniversary show. They did not sell 1,200 tickets to that show, I guarantee you. Okay? You got Luke Haas down in Louisiana pulling 1,000 a show for Wildcat Sports.
You also got to look at the demographic, too. Though.
Oh, that is true. That is true.
Because you can come here to Indiana, and most of these places don't, we're in Kentucky, but across the big pond over there. And most of those places may draw 50, 60 people. I think NWA Supreme actually drew 600 one night for a benefit show.
That's awesome.
But now, on the flip side, I did a show in Tennessee last summer at a fair, and there was a lot of people there, but Tennessee's a big wrestling.
It is, and you want to talk about Kentucky, the biggest show I've seen since I've been here was Beer and Bruises, and I couldn't remember the last... I don't think I've ever seen OVW draw 600. They drew 600 that night.
I have.
Okay, but it's been a long time since they've drawn 600 people to a show.
Gardens, but
yeah, it's been a long time since they've drawn 600 to a show. So, to you, give us your opinion. What is the big difference from then to now? Let's just start with let's say backstage, in the locker room. What's the biggest difference from now to then?
I think experience. Honestly, I think training. I think a lot of these guys are so big on wanting to be over and wanting to be either on TV or be seen that they're not taking the time to get trained by the right people in the business and learn it the right way, because they just want to go out and do everything they see on TV.
And that's kind of weird because there's probably more schools today than there's been in a long time.
Yeah, but what's the quality of these schools, though?
That's true. That's true.
You don't have people like Nick Dinsmore and Rip Rogers at all these schools. Some of these schools are just out there to take your money, and they don't have the experience that is needed to properly train somebody.
And that's completely understandable. I mean, and I think it's a great subject because, there's a lot of great schools, and whether you want to go to Tommy Dreamer or Lance Storm or what the Dudleys are doing or out in California, in between those areas, though, from coast to coast, where do you go? I think that's a great question. Who's doing the training?
And I don't know. I really don't.
And that's a big question. I mean,
I'll ask guys when I wrestle them, especially if I'm going to be in a match with them, who trained you? And a lot of the people that they'll tell me, I'm like, who the hell is that?
I have to laugh because, like I said, big school-wise, let's be honest, back even 15 years ago, okay, everyone knew what OVW was, training-wise, okay? You might have had one or two more big-name schools. That was it. Now there's a lot of big-name schools. Again, we've just mentioned a few. We haven't even mentioned the Monster Factory. Carino just started his school in North Carolina. There's bigger schools, but they're separated completely on the coast.
And if you notice, they're in the areas that have more of a tradition with wrestling.
Very true.
And OVW is the same. OVW, in my opinion, OVW is still a big school. I mean, they got Rip Rogers training their advanced class, and nobody in the history of wrestling has put more wrestlers on the big stage than Rip Rogers has.
And that's very, very true.
Nobody has.
Nope, nobody
and
has.
they have Rip Rogers there training their wrestlers. That's why I don't understand why you have all these little indie promotions around here with all these guys that are wrestling and they've been trained by Mitch Ryder, they've been trained by this guy. I mean, who are these guys? Why don't you go where somebody can actually teach you the proper way to do things? He might teach it to you and tell you to fucking forget it, because when you get to WWE, they're going to tell you what. But he's going to teach you, if you have to go in there and have an hour-long match with somebody because something screwed up or somebody didn't show up for a match, if you go to a class like Rip Rogers, you're going to get that experience.
And I think that's a lot to be said for that. And
you know, it's pretty sad. Rip Rogers had a seminar that he did up in Memphis, Indiana, that KDW, when I was there, we set up.
Okay.
Not one fucking person showed up.
How could you not want to be trained by a legend?
Ignorance. That's all I can say is ignorance.
I'm sitting here with my mouth open because I couldn't even imagine that. That absolutely blows my mind.
Yeah, and I mean, it was embarrassing to us because it's like we promoted it, we brought him in, and then nobody shows up. I mean, that makes us look like fools too.
Oh my God. And, you know, one of my pet peeves as a mark watching the business today is, whether I'm watching an indie show or I'm watching something TV, is little nuances like calling the match. You know, when the heel's calling the match, I don't want to see it. Be discreet, make it short, know when to slow it down. You're seeing guys today calling matches that have no business calling a match.
No.
It is absolutely ridiculous. And that's tough for the consumer to watch. If I can sit back and go, boy, I don't know why you're calling that match. That's a bad, bad situation.
There are too many variables in a match to allow somebody who has no experience in calling a match, call it. When I'm in there with people like, I play the heel role, but when I'm in there with people like, say, we was talking about Mitch Huff earlier, I don't call his spots. I let him call his part of the match. I call my part of the match because I have respect for him and I know he knows what he's doing. But now if I'm in there with somebody that I don't know, or I don't know their history or who they've been trained by or whatever, then I'm 100% going to call that match because I can read the crowd somewhat when I'm out there. I'm not perfect at it. Nobody in this sport is perfect at everything. But at least I can go out there and I can kind of feed off the crowd, know what they're reacting to, what they're not reacting to, what's boring to them, what's not boring to them, and have a decent match. But a lot of these guys aren't trained to do that.
And I hear it so much from guys in the locker room. It's a sign of respect when the booker comes up to you and goes, all right, this is the finish. You figure out the match. Because there's a trust factor there that you're going to put together a great match, and they don't have to worry about it. And then they can go sit with the two green guys and go, okay, let's work out the spots.
Right.
And that has to feel like a great feeling in there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it is a great feeling. I know when I first started, especially at OVW, Rick told you move for move for move for move for move what he wanted you to do in the match. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't do it, he might show up with a kendo stick on the match. Which is another thing that these guys don't have anymore. They don't have, they're getting this. They're not getting, slapped around or not necessarily that you have to beat somebody up to get it in their head, but there's nothing there to motivate them. My motivation was, I don't want Rip coming out here beating me with a kendo stick. They don't have that kind of motivation anymore to know that, when you get in the back and you have a bad match or you walk out on somebody's match, which I've had happen since I've been back, or whatever, that you might end up with an ass whooping when you get in the back.
Unbelievable. Well, let's go on to the next subject. One of my favorites is promoters. Boy, talk about difference from 1998 to now. The promotion game has really, really changed.
It sucks.
See, I was going to be somewhat nice about it.
No,
somewhat nice about it, because I know for the Mark the fan, it can be outlandish at times. It really can. And I will say this, I doubt you'll ever watch the show, Jeff Jarrett. unbelievable job. We went to a Global Force Wrestling show in Georgetown, top notch, all the way. Made sure all the talent was there. The VIP experience was great. The stadium show was great. A top notch type of thing. But then you go to certain promotions, and like I have, and great story down in Florida. Went to go see a Kevin Sullivan versus Sabu match. One of the worst experiences I've ever had at a wrestling match in my life. Promoter was horrifically bad. The whole situation was bad, and as a fan, completely unenjoyable.
Now, when you're saying promoter, are you saying promoter or booker? Because there is a very distinct difference, even though nowadays there isn't a difference, but there's supposed to be.
When I mean promoter, I'm meaning as the guy that is putting together the experience for the fan. I'm not talking about per se the product in the ring or what the bookers decide who's going over and who's not. What the fan experience is, who you're bringing in, how they're going to be treated.
The booker takes care of who you bring in.
Well, yeah, but I mean about just the experience itself, the interaction, the atmosphere.
You know what? The problem with promoters nowadays is they don't promote. They don't go out there. They don't bust their ass. One of the best promoters I ever worked for was Joe Bailey at BBW Wrestling in Kentucky. He would go out every single week and he would bust his ass all week long, putting up flyers, talking to business owners, selling tickets. That's what he did to make sure that when we had our show, we got a good payday because that's how we get paid.
The house was full.
Exactly. Now, was it always full? No.
No, I mean,
but he would go out there and he'd bust his ass every week. Now you got promoters out there, especially since we have social media now, that think that just putting a couple little flyers on Facebook or Twitter is getting out. Not everybody gets on Facebook and looks at Facebook every single day, you know, but everybody goes to the gas station every day or at least once a week. You know?
Most
everybody goes to the grocery store once a week or fast food restaurants once a week. You know, they don't get out there and they don't put the work in, but yet they expect the fans to come. And then when the fans don't come, then they think, oh, well, it's the talent. No, it's not the talent.
No, it's not.
It's you being a lazy ass and not getting out there and putting your product out there.
And I've said this a million times. I think that there is some really nice talent around here in the area. I would like to see better for them. But how many times do the fans know, go check this show out here or go check the show out there? If they're not on their damn phones and they don't see it on Facebook, there is no information.
No, and they don't know.
And don't get me wrong, social media is important.
And
for a younger crowd, it's important.
The only person you can blame for that is the promoter. And then on top of that, the promoter wants to hire bookers, or most of the promoters, not all of them. And there are some promoters that have been in the business, that have wrestled and stuff, that can book matches. But then you got these money mark promoters out here that are the ones that spend the money, that's never been in the wrestling business in their life. They just do it because they can say, hey, I've ran a wrestling business. I've been a promoter or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then they want to go back in the locker room and they want to try to book these matches and go over top of the guy that they've hired to book the matches, and the show goes downhill because they're no longer putting their trust in the guy who was originally. I just went through this with a company. I'm not going to name any names.
No, it's fine. We never asked.
I just went through this with a company where Vito was booking the company. The company was great. We were running full steam, but the promoter couldn't keep his nose out of the book. And so finally, Vito said, "You know what? Screw it. I'm leaving." A bunch of us left with him that he brought in, and that company has. I mean, I don't know what the crowds are like there because they still had they did have a loyal fan following of people that was going to the shows. I think still continue to go to the shows. But I've seen some of the shows since then. I've seen matches from them and stuff. And it's not the same product. It's not nowhere near as good as it was when they actually had somebody there that was booking good. So bad that even one of the co-owners of this said promotion has said, I'm done. Because he wasn't even allowed to do what he was told he was allowed to do.
Well, and I will say this also. It confuses me as a fan, and I'm 40 years old. I'm sorry, God bless me, saying that, you know, a lot of the product today is very family friendly, and that's fine. I want to see kids there. I want to see the business continue because the business has given so much to me as a fan. Saying that, not watching promotions go out to elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, getting out in the community to make people aware of their product and bringing in. But not only do they not do that, but then they give a family-friendly product that really insults anyone over the age of 26. That's my issue with it.
Yeah, there's a lot of promotions out there that say they're family friendly, but they're really not. And a lot of that goes on the wrestlers being professional when they're out there. You know, a lot of the wrestlers, they go out and they think that because they're not on a microphone or they're not on a camera talking, that they can just say what they want in front of the people or do what they want. And I mean, it's still family friendly. If it's family friendly, you don't say that stuff regardless when you're out there in front of the people.
No, I mean, if I go to an IWA Mid-South show and I know Axel or
Ian
Rod, whatever, I know what I'm going to expect.
Yeah.
There's blood, there's barbed wire, it's going to be hardcore. I go to an OVW show, I know that it is going to be family friendly. And there's a certain environment. Now, does that mean I want to be insulted? No, I want to, give me a couple of storylines that are maybe a little bit more adult oriented. And I'm a happy guy because I want to see the kids happy. I want to see the business continue to grow. But there is, if you're family friendly, you're family friendly. If you're not family friendly, don't pretend to be.
Right.
And that's my issue with it. And again, going out into the community, I don't see that as much anymore.
But nowadays with TV, what is family friendly? I mean, I turn on the TV and I see worse stuff on local channels on shows than I see out in the ring sometimes that are family friendly.
I don't disagree with you on that aspect. My thing is I don't see it into the community. What I mean by that is there was a local promotion in Charleston, South Carolina that I got to thankfully go help promote. They did a show actually inside a veterans home, completely free. All the guys drove 3 hours to Charleston to do the show for free, knowing they weren't going to get paid because the people in that place, that was maybe the first time they had come out of their bedrooms in 2 weeks. That says a lot. That's you reaching out to the community and doing something and giving something back for what you love. You don't see promotions doing that anymore.
Well, I mean,
Some,
it depends on where you go.
But in general.
You know, IWX has a show coming up, not this Saturday, or it wasn't this Saturday, but I believe it's next Saturday that's a benefit show, I believe, for a little boy with cancer.
That's amazing.
See, and
I
mean,
love stuff like that.
Since I've been back in the wrestling business in the last 4 years, I have been at least in a part of about 5 benefit shows for either someone who has passed away and they needed money for a tombstone, or me and Vito and a couple other guys, we set up a show in Salem, Indiana, for a little boy who ended up passing away that had cancer, and we did a big show for him. We even brought in a Ninja Turtle to wrestle because he loved Ninja Turtles.
And that's,
I mean, so there are people out there that's willing to do it.
There are some, and I just want to see more promoters do stuff like that.
And, it doesn't hurt for, promotions to get into, like, the high schools and help out with, making the high schools some money with their athletics department or stuff like that,
Exactly.
I mean, that gets your name out there, and especially when you go to a school and you let them sell the tickets at the school and the kids are selling the tickets for the show. I mean, that really pushes your product. And no, you don't see too much of that anymore.
It's sad. It really is sad to me because, again, I grew up in El Paso. The Guerreros are everywhere. The Guerreros were everywhere. They had their children out there doing it. To get that show on a Saturday night, and they were everywhere, and that was a big thing for me growing up. That showed me how much they cared, and I wish more promoters would do stuff like that. It would be great to see, especially. Well, let's be honest, it's a tough time out there these days.
Oh, it is.
It really is. All right, so let's go into. I want to bring up one more thing before we close this out. When we had this. Kind of started talking about doing the show, a particular word came out, and I've heard it out of Jim Cornette's mouth before. Spot monkey. Let's talk about spot monkeys, because I'm, again, a story freak. You tell me a story, and I bought it. And I don't mean a 3-week story, WWE. I want a 2-month story. Get me invested into it. Here you go, because you love the word spot monkey.
I know a lot of spot monkeys.
I'm just saying, let's go into this term. What does the term spot monkey mean to you?
Well, it means like if I go out there and I'm wrestling somebody who may or may not be trained properly, they're not trained in the psychology of wrestling, and they feel like that they've got to get every little spot in that they can get in. Whether it's they've watched WWE that past week, so they want to do the 619 followed by the attitude adjustment, followed by the frog splash, followed by the whatever.
Unless your name's Shane Andrews, please don't do a frog splash. Leave Eddie and Art alone. They did it. That's their thing. Shane, you have permission. Please, go ahead.
It's somebody that wants to get all their stuff in. I mentioned earlier that I had somebody walk out of a match with me.
Yeah.
And that's basically what he did. He got his whole shine in and did all his stuff to me and then blamed it on the referee for messing the match up. And walked out on the match when it was my turn to get my heat on him.
Oh.
And, he's lucky that there was another twist to the story that we was doing that day, and there was somebody in the audience that I was grabbing out of the audience and bringing into the ring, because had that not happened, he either got some old school lessons in the back. But, like I said, these young guys, man, I've seen some of the greatest talents on the independent scene, and these young guys that can do all this stuff, but it's like every time I see them and they're in the back, I'm like, guys, slow down, tell a story. You don't have to do, you're getting paid maybe $15-$20 to be in the ring. Why are you going to do 15 different high-flying spots and risk an injury, especially if you're wanting to make a career out of this? Mm-hmm. Why are you going to do that for $15-$20? Go in there and give them a couple moves. Then on the next show, give them a couple more moves. Give them a couple different moves that they didn't see the week before. Don't put all your moves in one match, because then they've seen it all.
And if you're one of those guys, do us all a favor.
Quit.
Go. That sounds going to be nice. WWE Network is called Rick Steamboat. Plug in the name. The man had 5 moves and could go an hour, no problem whatsoever, with anybody in the business. It didn't matter.
You don't even need 5 moves to go an hour.
No, because Dusty only had 2. Let's be honest. Dusty had 2 and could go an hour every night.
I think Ric Flair only had like 3.
Yeah, but then he had to flip over the ropes. He had a couple of sales. I'll give Rick his credit.
He was a feeder. He would feed to people.
Oh, all day long.
But as far as having moves to do to people, he didn't.
No, he kept it simple and basic.
I think I seen him come off the top rope one time where somebody didn't throw him, but all the rest of the time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. How many moves?
Everybody popped every time it happened.
Okay, how many moves did Arn Anderson have?
Arn Anderson was a good technical wrestler.
He was, but let's be honest. He's in a tag match, whether it was early or telling. Let's be honest. It was working a body part. And eventually you were going to get a spine buster. That was it.
Yes,
yes.
And that's another lost art, is working a body.
Oh, jeez.
That
don't
is
even remind
such
me.
a lost art. That's like, regardless of what body part. I was in a match one time at KDW. It was me and Jebediah Blackhawk. And the match at the beginning of the show, the very first match, was 2 guys that tore it down.
Okay.
They did everything. It was a spot monkey match, but
Gotcha.
They did everything. But the crowd was into it and stuff. So me and Jeb looked at everybody and we're like, "What are we gonna do to follow that? We're the main event. How will we follow that?" Jeb looks at me. He says, "Let's do what they ain't seen. Let's wrestle." Mm-hmm. We went out there. We worked body parts and grabbed holds, and that's how we did the match. And it got over. It might not got over as much as all the high-flying stuff, but, it got over, and it worked, and we had a really good match.
It still works today.
And nobody didn't take a bump until the very end of the match, and it was one bump that whole match. Because we wanted to show everybody, not just in the back, but out in the crowd, that you can go out there and you don't have to take 25 bumps in order to have a good psychological wrestling match.
Oh, and I'm going to throw this out there before we end this up. Again, folks, Chad Gable, one of the future stars for WWE. If you get a chance, NXT, American Alphas, one of the best Greco-Roman wrestlers in the world, former Olympic hero. Watching him, 5 moves, all he needs. The way he works the body part, works the arm,
and the moves, the Greco-Roman style, that strong style, a little bit of catch can in there. I never want to see that man get off the ropes to save my life. Just wrestle. And I can sit here, I can watch him wrestle for 20 minutes. So there is hope. Maybe that's a nice way of saying it. There are some guys out there that are doing that. There is some hope. All right. So you're back in OVW. A lot of things going on. If I'm a promoter and I want to bring the Irish Thug in, I need to see some people get their ass kicked. How do I get a hold of you?
The easiest way is on my Facebook page. Right now it's Nate Steele, or my fan page, which is the Irish Thug, Nate Stone.
Okay.
Which I'm probably gonna take off the last.
Just say Nate and then be happy with it.
But yeah, you can look me up. I mean, I'm not. My Facebook page is open to everybody that wants to come look on it. You know.
And that's good.
So
that's a good thing. And talking to business fans, there's been a lot of talk about what we've got going on. You know, it's now KC&DAVE. Yes, the podcast will debut in April. I will be giving you that exact date here really, really soon and where to look it up on. All that information is coming up really soon. I also want to give a shout out to my boy DC. Season 2 of Powerbomb Nation coming out real soon. And I am proud to announce I will be on Powerbomb Nation again for Season 2, promoting, talking the business. DC hit me up, 507 Gimmick Street, and said, hey, Kevin, I like this show. Come over, talk. Hey, Powerbomb Nation, one of the best podcasts out there today. Looking forward to it, DC. It's going to be a lot of fun, a lot of excitement going on. Nate, this has been a blast, man. So when we go to podcast, you got to come back, right?
I'll come back.
That's what I like to hear.
And if people want to see some good old school wrestling, come down to OVW and watch me wrestle.
Every Wednesday night, the Davies Arena. I cannot suggest it enough. It's always a blast. You might see KC there. You're definitely going to see people like Virgil and Mitch there. There's going to be a lot of people there. A lot of fun. And talk about a company that really does still promote when it comes to family-friendly children, disabled. It's still a very family atmosphere there in the arena.
And we talk about the locker room, and I have to say the locker room at OVW is actually not really changed much from when I was originally there. I mean, there's a lot more respect there than there is in the independent circles.
And I think that has a lot to do with the history and the respect for what OVW's meant to the industry.
And I love being back.
And I know I'm excited to see you back, and I don't have to travel around to go watch you wrestle now. I can just head out to the Davies Arena every Wednesday night, or the first Saturday. I know. And then don't forget the first Saturday of every month, Saturday Night Special, always a great show. They always make sure that everyone's taken care of. So for Nate, the Irish Thug, for Casey, we're drinking Coors Light, not Guinness. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. There's only I can say. Go ahead.
Now, if we do the podcast, I need Guinness.
I will make sure we drink this for one Mr. Silvio podcast. We got to have Guinness. And it's only I can say, deuces!